Hi friends, Prepared Suburbanite here, bringing you part 3 of my thoughts on the shit hits the fan threats that we all face. This episode we're going to be talking about what can and will go wrong and what can you do about it. So stick with us. Alright, so in the last video, I spent pretty much that entire video kind of breaking down all the shit hits the fan threats that we face. And I broke it into 4 major categories: personal, regional, national, and global. So on a personal basis, things like a job loss, divorce, loss of a loved one, diagnosed with a disease, house fire, broken pipes, auto accident, crime victim, power losses, repossessions, those kinds of things. Those are the personals, that the threats that we face. Kelly, you're just so cute. You have to go away now, okay? Go tell your mommy she wants you, okay? All right, so anyway. So those are the personal threats that we face pretty much every single day. And what can and will go wrong if one of those kinds of threats happens to hit you? Well, income loss can cause delinquencies, repossessions, evictions, all kinds of stress in a marriage. Kids are going to go without. There could be reduced food in the house. You may not be able to afford to buy your car insurance, buy your life insurance, buy your health insurance. Those are really devastating kinds of things. Those kinds of things cause stress, depression, and in some cases, suicide. And it's an epidemic. On a lesser scale, folks that are faced with that level of stress after losing a job, losing a loved one, going through a divorce, they tend to make bad decisions, exercising bad judgment. Those are the kinds of folks that sometimes will just like go steal from the Boy Scout troop, or take money from their employer, or try to rob a bank, or do something stupid. So you get the bad judgment factor that can happen in some of those situations, certainly not all, but some. Fear. A lot of people withdraw into a shell because they're so fearful, because they've lost their job, they've had a fire, they've been a crime victim. It can be extraordinarily stressful, and people react to stress in a lot of different ways. And fear is a motivator for all kinds of bad things. There's economic costs. There's a cascade kind of an effect. You lose your job, you lose your income, you've got bills to pay, you got credit card debt, you got car payments, you got mortgage payments, you got utility bills, you name it, you got it. And you'll have also, if you've had a flood or a fire in your house, you've got costs that you have to expend to repair and replace things that can be pretty substantial. You may be victim of hunger, possibly even starvation. If you don't have enough food to eat and you don't have any income to buy any, you may have to resort to making bad judgments about how you're going to replenish food stores and how you're going to feed your family. You know, if it's February or March, January, somewhere around in the wintertime, you can't just go out and plant a bunch of potatoes and expect that tomorrow you're going to have enough potatoes to eat for a couple of months. That's not going to happen. So being prepared, I think, really helps. And one of the biggest things is a loss of confidence. And that kind of is related to the fear factor that you can face in those kinds of situations. You lose confidence, you don't know what to do. You don't know the next step to take. You can't figure out how to dust off your old resume and get it up to date. You don't know, you don't feel confident enough to go asking people for a job. You don't feel confident enough to go to your friends, your family, your church community, whatever, and ask for help. It's that lack of confidence, that loss of confidence, that I think can really hinder and really, really hurt. So what can you do in a personal kind of a situation? Well, your plan should include a secondary income source. Now, I know that there's not a lot of us that managed to get through the last 20 or 30 years without having a secondary income, whether both the husband and wife worked in a couple situation, whether the single bread earner works full-time days and part-time job in the evenings or nights, stocking shelves at the supermarket or working at a big box store, those kinds of things. Having a secondary source of income, very, very helpful. Even from self-employment, if you've got a skill that you can actually make some money on, you may be able to leverage that skill, whether it's being a handyman, sharpening knives, being a tax preparer, being a general laborer, doing babysitting, house cleaning, consulting, acting as a caregiver for elderly and infirm people. There's ways to gather a secondary income that, if you lose your primary income, will at least keep some money coming in. So I think primary on your planning list should be planning for or even having a secondary source of income. Being debt-free. Yeah, we've heard of Dave Ramsey. His discipline is a discipline, and you've really got to follow the discipline in order to become debt-free in a reasonable period of time. But you shouldn't allow yourself to get that far into debt that you really have to resort to a plan like that. But living day to day, very easy to slip into it. You got a mortgage, you got a car. Oh, the wife gets a second job. You got to have a second car, so you got a second car payment. You got kids going to college. You got this going on. You got that going on, and oh, you got to have a new roof on the house, so you got to get a home equity line of credit and to pay for that. You got credit cards that you're using on a day-to-day basis to buy your gas and maybe even your food, and you got credit card bills. Very easy to get into a situation like that. Dave Ramsey's plan works. I know it does. I followed the tenets of that to get myself out of debt. We managed to get to a debt-free situation about 7 or 8 years ago. And after that, I took all the money that I was spending getting out of debt, and I socked it away in investments and in personal savings. So I've got a debt-free life. I've got a situation where I've got cash backup, and I really think that you should plan on having a minimum of 3 to 6 months of your regular day-to-day expenses in available liquid cash assets, whether it's a savings account, whether it's a mutual fund that you can gain access to, something that is going to work for you, that you can get access to if you end up facing one of the personal SHTF threats. Make sure your insurances are up to date. Make sure you've got your life insurance, your health insurance, your auto insurance, your liability insurance on your house, and make sure everything's up to date. I had a friend of mine once that ended up in a nasty, nasty financial situation. I think he ended up having to declare bankruptcy at the end of it. because they forgot to mail. They wrote the check, they put it in the envelope, they put a stamp on the envelope, and when they went to go mail it, his wife put it in the glove compartment of the car. She had to stop somewhere. She wanted to keep it safe. She stuffed it in the glove compartment, closed the door on the glove compartment, went and did her stuff, forgot all about mailing the auto insurance premium. They had the check written, didn't mail it. Well, short time later, they got canceled. The very next week, whether my buddy knew that he had a lapsed auto insurance policy or not, I don't know, but he was driving back home from being out of town on business for his job and lost control of his car on an icy patch of highway, flipped it, totaled it, that was it, and he had no insurance. He couldn't work, couldn't get to work. He had some injuries that he had to deal with, totaled his car, ended up in the cascade events of economic catastrophe just for the lack of one little payment. And he ended up, I think, if I remember correctly, had to declare bankruptcy to gain protection from the creditors because everybody was after him after that because of the cascade effect. If you live in an area where you really are concerned about your personal safety, you're concerned about home invasions, you're concerned about a poor neighborhood, whatever it is, should you invest, and it's a question you have to ask for yourself, should you invest in a home security system? There's a number of them out there. The retail ones, monthly subscription kind of a things. You get the cameras, you get the things on the windows, you get stuff that you can hook into your computer and monitor your front door with the cameras outside and the back door with the cameras outside, your garage entrance. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do if you can afford it. They can be pretty darn expensive. You've got ADT, you've got Simply Safe. There's a number of them out there. But if you live in an area where you're concerned about your personal and property safety, I would suggest investing in a home security system. And then you get into the real basics of prepping. Food storage, water storage, heating. Do you have an auxiliary plan for heating your house if you lose power for a couple of weeks or a couple of months? Do you have a fireplace? Do you have kerosene heaters? Do you have a way to keep your house warm in the wintertime? May not be so bad to try to keep it cool in the summertime. At least you can open the doors and the windows and get some breeze going through. But suffering through a very cold January in the northern states can be quite a challenge. So do you have some backup for that heat? Your food stores. Yeah, there's 10,000 YouTube videos and 10,000 articles on the internet about what kind of food stores you should have and what you should invest in and how much, and should it be freeze-dried, should it be pre-packaged, do you get good deals from Mountain House or this one or Wise Food or that one? That's going to be up to you to determine what you're going to need. But I would consider planning your budget around building a food stores that's going to get you through initially 72 hours, then a month, then 2 months, 6 months, then maybe a year. And the same goes with water. Do you have an auxiliary place to gain water if you're city water, if you're dependent on city water and that goes out? If you're dependent on a well and the power goes out and you've got an electric pump, you're still not going to have any water. So do you have water storage, and do you have a way to gather water in your area, a lake, a stream, a pond, something like that? And then do you have the skills, the equipment, to keep it purified? Do you have water filtration system, iodine tablets? Do you have enough extra fuel to boil water before you use it? Those kinds of things. Something to really consider, because water's a very, very, very important survival item if you don't have any. So your replenishment plan has to be all wrapped up in the food, the water, your heating, your shelter, that kind of a thing. So have a replenishment plan. How are you going to gather more food? Where are you going to go to get it? Are you going to raise chickens? Are you going to raise rabbits? Are you going to engage in bartering? How are you going to gather the survival needs that you're going to have if the shit hits the fan on a personal basis and you're out of a job and don't have any money and all kinds of bad things are happening? Yep. If times are good for you right now, now's the time to prepare for when it's going to be bad. Build your network. You really do need a network of people. Lone wolves, yeah, if they're skilled enough, they may be able to survive. But for most of us regular folks, you're going to need a network. And that network can be neighbors, friends, family, your church community, even a prepper group. If you're involved in that kind of a thing, you may be able to rely a little bit, to some degree, on some assistance from the network that you've built. I've seen our church community bend over backwards for folks that have found themselves in a temporary situation where they're faced with newly diagnosed disease, the care, the food, the phone calls, the volunteer transportation back and forth to hospitals and doctor appointments and things. That's the kind of stuff that you can use your network for to help get through some of those really, really tough times. That's a synopsis of what can and will go wrong. What can and will go wrong if you're faced with a personal SHTF disaster type situation, and what you can and should do about it. This is the Prepared Suburbanite reminding you to be prepared always, and stay tuned for part 4, where I'm going to get into the issues that affect us regionally, nationally, and globally. So stick with us and be safe out there.